Members, next up on the agenda is House Bill 488, Code Council Reorganization and Various Codes Amendments. And we are joined today by Representative Brody. Representative Brody, you are recognized to explain House Bill 488. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I believe in keeping with the tradition of the Senate on finance, we're just sticking with the finance sections.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. There are three of them. Basically, first out, Section 2 raises the permit exemption for, or allowing a permit to $40,000, and at the same time matches that with the increase in the general contractor licensing lower limit to $40,000. So they're the same. Section 10 is a $100 single lot fee for developments, or it gives an option, or at the developer's discretion, they can do an acreage fee. These are for development of lots. And lastly, Section 13 allows for local government to require developers to set aside up to, or to eventually set up aside up to 10% of the cost of a stormwater design and implementation program to be held by the HOA or property manager in the future.
Thank you,
Chairman,
Representative
I believe that's
Brody.
it.
I also failed to acknowledge your colleagues there. Representative Rodell, thank you for being here. Senator Jarvis, thank you for being here and your work on this bill. I believe we have an amendment on this bill. It should be before you members. Senator Lazzara, you are recognized to explain the amendment to House Bill 488.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, we have three essential changes. One is the effective date to January of 2026 in the first section, and where the residential code will become effective. And number two, the wind zone category, we changed it on sheathing inspections to 140 or greater. And then the number three in section 3 is the private rewording of a statement on private driveway. These were all agreed upon, and no opposition.
Thank you, Senator Lazzara. Members, any questions or comments on Senator Lazzara's amendment? Seeing none, I have a motion from Senator Todd Johnson to accept the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And House Bill 488 is now before you as amended. Members, any additional questions or comments for Representative Brody? Senator Woodard, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank Representative Brody and some of the stakeholders for the amendment as it relates to the energy code. I guess I did have a question. There was some conversation about if we paused the energy rules that there would be a 6-year delay before the new residential council could work on these. I assume this amendment fixes that and replaces that, so they would actually, I guess they've been mandated to start and get this done by January 1st of 2026. Am I reading that correct?
Representative Brody, you're recognized.
Yes, Senator, that is correct.
Okay.
Absolutely correct.
Follow up?
Senator Woodard, you're recognized.
Thank you. Another issue that came up was FEMA brick grants, and that somehow the delay would mean that we would lose funding for these brick grants, and that it would harm some of the things that we're trying to do. So could you, with this amendment or the general language in the bill, will this affect our ability to receive brick grants and put us at a disadvantage?
Representative Brody, you're recognized to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, nothing in the bill affects the ability to receive the brick grants or the full allocation, provided the Building Code Council adopts the 2024 residential code, which is completely in their power to do so at this point.
Okay. One more follow-up.
Senator Woodard, you're recognized for a follow-up.
Thank you, Representative Brody. And as I actually read it, 488 actually puts us in a better position to receive these FEMA brick funds because of some of the steps that we're taking. But I guess my last question is, does not adopting the full energy standards to your knowledge, have any way that it would impact the state losing grant money or insurance ratings in any way?
Representative Brody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the provisions, and I have it, the BRIC Technical Evaluations Guidance, it requires that to get the full allocation for that section of the grant, that you have to pass the current, within 5 years, the current ICC, International Code Council, model code. And by the Building Code Council, if they do that, we'll be in full compliance with that. We'll get 100% of the grant points for that. So, but it doesn't say anything about any of the other codes. It strictly says the ICC residential or building code.
Thank you, Representative Brody. Thank you, Senator Woodard. Senator Lazzara, did you have a question earlier, sir?
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to allude to the same thing. It does not affect the BRIC grants. And actually, the wind zone portion of it actually enhances our capabilities to receive those grants.
Thank you, Senator Lazzara. Members, any other questions or comments on this bill? I will provide a couple of areas of color. I've received some correspondence on this issue. Some of it has been erroneous. I can't tell you if any of it was done so purposefully or people just parroting comments or what it is. We have seen some areas that needed additional clarity, but I am going to provide a couple of comments. This does not prohibit sprinklers from being in commercial buildings. It prohibits sprinklers from being required in residential buildings. You can still choose to build them if you want to pay for that, and you can do it. We saw a lot of other comments about insulation and things of that nature. This is the floor. This is the minimum standard of what these codes represent. So if you want to have additional insulation in your home, you can have it. If you want to have additional features in your home, you can have it. If you're a builder and you have a population that can afford something different, you can build it differently. It doesn't prohibit you from doing those things. Some of those comments have been fast and loose and very aggravating for us to deal with, and trying to wade through this early. I appreciate the patience everyone gave me and my fellow members, because I'm not a contractor, but I did read the bill, and I would encourage others to do that. It provides a lot of information. Any other questions or comments on this legislation? Seeing none, I have a motion from Senator Craven. Let me read the motion with my glasses. Senator Craven moves for favorable to the bill as amended, rolled into a proposed committee substitute, with a favorable report to the committee substitute and an unfavorable report to the original bill, with a referral to rules. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Ayes have it, and Senate Bill 488 will be referred to rules. Members, if you could stick with me just one moment. I missed some public comment on a bill we've already voted on, Senate Bill 488, and I want to give these individuals a chance to speak if they'd like to. First, Mr. David Crawford with AIA of North Carolina. Is Mr. Crawford still here?
Thank you.
Mr. Crawford,
Thank you, Mr.
you're
Chairman.
recognized.
I appreciate it. I'm Dave Crawford. I'm the Executive Vice President for the American Institute of Architects here in North Carolina. You all received in your office the AIA's position on House Bill 488 already. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Coalition for Current Safety Codes. That includes the AIA, International Code Council, National Electrical Manufacturers Association, the National Fire Protection Association, the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, and UL Solutions. Now, I know the committee is here for finance-related issues only, so I'll forego the number of safety concerns that we have for 488. But I do want to address a few things related to finance. One, Senator Woodard, you brought up the issue of the BRIC grants. One of the things we have learned is the 2022 BRIC grants were downgraded here in North Carolina because of the state of our codes right now. And if we continue on that path, for another couple of years, there is the high likelihood that we'll lose access to some of those BRIC grants. In 21, we had $50 million worth of BRIC grants that went to the communities of Duck, Fairbluff, Greenville, Siler City, Gastonia, Fayetteville, Hickory, Lumberton, and Salisbury. The other issue here is having to do with storm-ravaged communities and whether or not that they can get federal assistance after the storms. FEMA has said, and I quote, federal agencies are being asked to review programs and support new construction or substantial rehabilitation of homes and other buildings through grants, loans, funding, financing, or technical assistance. Ultimately, receiving federal assistance on projects that use older codes will not be allowed. So that's something we need to consider when we're talking about adopting the new code. So thank you very much. I'd like to continue to work on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Next up, we have Natalie McDonald. Is Natalie here with NCBCC? Ms. McDonald, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members. My name is Natalie McDonald. I'm the mechanical engineer seat on the North Carolina Building Code Council. So want to echo some of my colleague here concerns with the BRIC funding as well. So also wanted to bring some of the same points he just made, but wanted to bring forth some of direct feedback we've gotten from FEMA. Specifically that the misalignment with our state's adoption code and the ICC updates resulted in North Carolina sub-applicants who have adopted the state's code to receive 10 out of the 20 possible points for the statewide building code criteria during the 2022 cycle, and this has affected our total score for FEMA funding and will affect in the future likely access to grant funding in years to come. We've also already proposed, or North Carolina has applied for $141 million of grants this year, but we've already lost $650,000 worth because of our lack of being able to update codes in the recent years. Additionally, though, want to bring up the cost impacts of splitting the code council into residential and commercial codes. So this is going to have an additional burden on the Department of Insurance and the staff that it takes to help us with these codes, specifically $500,000 per year. And then between now and when the code is actually adopted through, that could cost up to $3 million for out of the state budget. So that's another financial thing to consider. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. The chair will point out it will only cost money if appropriated, and I don't think that's going to be an issue. I do want to touch on two things that were brought up. And that was about BRIC and grants in the past, and this is another thing I've gotten emails on. That has nothing to do with this bill. That's already occurred. That's in the past. That wasn't caused by this bill. That's not even law yet. I don't know why we continue to bring that up when this bill didn't cause it. We should keep our comments in committee to the bill. Is anyone else that has signed up back there, Dwight? I don't have anyone else on the list. I think the other gentleman has waived his right. All right, members, thank you for your time. Committee is adjourned.